Candidate Conversations with New York City's next mayor with Marcia, Kramer, and Maurice DuBois.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to Candidate Conversations. I'm Maurice DuBois.
And I'm Marcia, Kramer. From ending gun violence to vaccine mandates, the next mayor of New York City will have a lot on his plate. We're less than 1 week away from the election that will decide who that will be.
So, over the past 2 days, we are having live, in-depth conversations with each candidate, asking them questions so you can compare before you go out and vote. And joining us today is Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa. Curtis Sliwa, great to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Slight correction. Republican and independent party
yeah. Okay.
Slight correction.
Okay, we got that in.
Yes.
All right, well, let's start with this right here. Eric Adams carries a gun. He's a former cop. Gun violence is top of mind in our city with the gun violence we've been seeing. Would you consider issuing concealed carry permits for self-defense for those who qualify? A lot of our viewers have written in about this, saying, you know, carry permits have been given to the elites, leaving regular folks to fend for themselves. Is that a good idea or bad idea?
It should be if Eric Adams is going to continue to carry a gun, if he's lucky enough to become mayor. I choose not to carry a gun, and I'm a victim of violent crime. Shot 5 times on the orders of the Gottis to the Gambinos, hollow point bullets. I was offered a carry permit by the NYPD. I said no. You're going to go into the inner city where most of these gang shootings occur by young males, and you're strapped, and then you're going to tell them they shouldn't be? They know the hypocrisy there. Should not be carrying weapons, especially if you're mayor. You should not be strapped with a 9mm. I don't know what this obsession that Eric Adams, my opponent, has with carrying guns. I say no.
But what about law-abiding citizens who want to do this?
Because right now the elites get to carry the weapons. We know that. So you should broaden it out. You should make it easy, especially people who've already been victimized, whether they have a carry permit or a premise permit. I would say yes. But I think it's got to be.
But you're saying you want to have more guns on the street.
You're saying two things at once.
No, I'm saying if somebody like an Eric Adams can carry a weapon as an elected official and promotes that, how could he then say to the law-abiding people who are constantly being victims of violent crime that they can't? I think it has to be do as I say and do as I do.
So just
I myself don't believe in carrying weapons.
So just to be clear, you're saying law-abiding citizens should be able to carry weapons?
As long as they can meet the rigorous standards that you need in New York City and know how to use the weapon and obviously practice with the weapon and go under psychiatric review on a regular basis.
Okay.
So, Curtis, former police commissioner Bill Bratton says that the next mayor, if it turns out to be you, will inherit a mess created by the state legislature with their criminal justice reforms. We're talking bail reform, decriminalizing the possession of needles, even there are still drugs in them. And so district attorneys are adding to that because obviously we've seen a number of cases where they don't want to prosecute cases like this. So the real question is this: should we return to broken windows enforcement, and especially going after people who evade fares on the subways?
Well, as you know, Marcia, I know one of those DAs very well, Queens DA Melinda Katz, who's the mother of my 2 sons.
Do you think that she's given up on prosecuting these kinds of cases, and does that irritate you?
They all have. They all have. And I would simply say, you want no bail at the state level? Why did we think so pretentiously, so omnipotently that we could do it better than Jersey? Jersey had it 2 years before us.
But should we go back to broken windows?
Yes, yeah, but just on the point of Jersey, they leave it finally to the discretion of the judge. If you're a danger to yourself or anyone else, you get remanded to jail, no bail. Why couldn't we do the no bail reform that Jersey had done? It works. In New York, it's been a disaster.
So what would broken windows look like?
Yeah.
Oh, broken windows. First you start, if you're elected mayor, cleaning up the garbage, painting over the graffiti, obviously dealing with the potholes, and then people will believe that you can make a difference.
That's not broken windows.
Well, broken windows is if I see a broken window and the window is not repaired, other people are going to break windows.
But it's also arresting people for low-level crimes, public urination, fare evasion, things like that, especially fare evasion.
Of course.
Which people argue is an entry crime to doing other crimes.
Well, it's not just an entry crime. How is the MTA system, which is bleeding out money, going to be able to self-sustain itself? Eric Adams is promoting free fare on the subways and buses. How are you going to do that? You must collect the fare. Remember, Cuomo, before the lockdown and pandemic, promised he would assign 500 MTA state cops to stop the fare evaders. He never delivered on that promise. And the DAs won't prosecute. Yes, they need to be prosecuted. You have to stop fare evaders.
Yeah, but how do you stop fare evaders? Are you going to take more cops? Are you going to hire more MTA cops, more NYPD cops? How are you going to do it? And are you going to order your police officers to do that?
Yes, well, it's clear that...
And if you take it away from, if you're putting them there, what about going after guns and the millions of other crimes that we have in New York City?
We are responsible for safety in the subways, New York City, even though it's a state agency. You need at least 4,500 cops, an additional 500 undercover cops, just to cover the system, both the trains and buses. And part of their responsibility has to be stop the fare evaders. Check their ID. They have outstanding warrants or maybe have committed other indiscretions, they need to be arrested on the spot. But if it's just a fare evasion, write the ticket and keep writing the ticket.
The presumption is this stuff leads to the shooting in Union Square the other day, this kind of thing, this kind of atmosphere. What do you do to prevent incidences like that? What's your number of cops that it takes?
Well, we need 38,000 cops overall. We're lingering at about 35,000, 34,500.
A new class today was welcomed.
Excuse me?
A new class of cops.
Yeah,
today.
but they're 2 classes behind, and there's early retirements galore. So many men and women are leaving before they should retire.
So we're 3,000 short, you say?
3,500 short. So that means, let's look at detectives alone who have to solve these crimes. We went from 7,500 to 5,500. We've lost 200 trained detectives. That's why the rape situation is skyrocketing. Most of these cases are not being resolved because we don't have enough tech.
But if you ride the subway, you're interested in prevention.
Yes.
We don't want shootings in the subway, obviously.
Exactly.
How do you prevent cases like that?
Well, number one, if you have a free subway system that Eric Adams wants, you'll never stop it. But you have to give the police the opportunity to use stop, question, and frisk when they have reasonable suspicion. That's not like what Bloomberg did in his last 4 years, which is have a quota, force the cops to do more stop and frisk when it wasn't required. It is constitutional when it's done correctly.
But what about all the other broken window crimes? Public urination, the open container law, graffiti. Should they be going after them, prosecuting them, and ticketing them?
Absolutely. They should stop them, check their ID. If they have, obviously, outstanding warrants, lock them up. But on those matters of open public drinking, graffiti, what we call quality of life issues, ticketable offense. Ticketable offense.
On the subject of mayhem, bicycles in the city, we see these guys riding the wrong way uptown, downtown streets, right? We see gangs or groups of bikes riding wild every weekend. What do you do to put a stop to that?
Well, it should be a police issue. That should be Department of Transportation non-issue. The Blasio administration wants to refer it to the Department of Transportation, who does no enforcement.
But do you ticket them?
Excuse me?
Do you ticket them?
It depends on the situation. Again, in order to ticket somebody, you got to get ID.
They go up the street the wrong way.
Right.
They go through red lights. They ride on sidewalks and terrorize people. Do you ticket them?
This is what you do, just like they used to do, including traffic control agents who are under the supervision of the NYPD. They're coming, right? They're popping wheelies, they're ATV, all the electric bikes, all that.
Taking over the street.
Stop them. Check the paperwork. Most of them don't even have paperwork for the electrified vehicles or the ATVs. Seize them, put them in the back trunk of the car, bring it to the precinct, say, young man, when you can bring proper identification, we'll give you your vehicle back. That'll stop it quick.
Should bikes have licenses?
Not the normal kind of bikes I rode, you know, the Big Chief Schwinn bicycle that I delivered the New York Daily News with. But the electric bikes, you may have to do that because they are breaking every rule in the book.
So if not a license plate, what if you catch a guy or a girl driving up the street the wrong way or going through a red light? Should you confiscate the bike for that?
Well, no. You got to give them a warning. Look,
why? How do you prosecute if you say, okay, listen, don't do it again?
It's got to be egregious. I mean, and obviously, if you're in an area.
Isn't it
always egregious
going up the street
If
the
you
wrong
almost
way?
get hit by a bike, it's egregious, right?
I understand.
It really is.
I understand that, but we have many situations where people go up the wrong ways. You have all these bike lanes. My position on bike lanes is if you use it, you keep it. If you don't use it over a year's period of time, you lose it.
But you sound like you're saying that you have so many people going up the street the wrong way that you're going to ignore it.
No, no, I'm saying traffic control agents, that's what they get paid for, and NYPD have to do intervention, have to stop them, have to check ID, and then obviously either give them a warning. They've done that for people in vehicles before. They give them a warning, and maybe the next time you got to hit them and hit them hard.
How many miles of bike lanes do you want to get rid of? You say you
I don't want the Eric Adams 300 additional bike lanes. I'd say we could use probably about half of what we have. I've seen some neighborhoods, they love the bike lanes. Give them more. Other neighborhoods, they never use the bike lanes. I've had my 2 sons out on Queens Boulevard where they put in a bike lane. It's destroyed stores because it took parking away. And I was teaching them Skelly, the game of our youth. We were sitting there for an hour. No bikes came by. I would say, you lose it there on Queens Boulevard.
Okay, so look, once Rikers Island is closed, what should the city do with the land? How about turning it into a vast farm where you raise produce for people who are hungry in this city, but you could also employ the homeless or other people, provide jobs, and you could even have, you know, bunkhouses where people could live. What about that as a novel way to use the property?
Now, Marcia, we're not going to be growing marijuana there now that it's a legal recreational
I did not say marijuana.
Drug. I'm just saying, you say a farm,
marijuana.
right? Hydroponics.
But that's exactly where your mind went.
Well,
your mind went to marijuana. I say grow food.
No, I don't have a problem with that. But I can tell you, Eric Adams supporters, the developers and realtors, they're lusting for that space to build, to develop, because that's prime property.
But if you were the mayor, what would you do with the property?
Oh, right now, having been the only one actually on Rikers Island, you know, behind bars, what you do is you got 8 buildings. You take 4 of them down. They can't be rehabbed. The other 4 can be rehabbed. You have to take the emotionally disturbed inmates, put them in the state facilities, Kirby Psychiatric on Randall's Island, Creedmoor, where they can get their mental health and medicine. The gangs, you got to break them up. They house the gangs together.
So what
That's
you're
why
saying
they rule
is
the island.
you're not going to build those community jails?
Where are you going to get the money, Marcia? There's no money. And by the way, Eric Adams would put a community jail in your neighborhood. Nobody wants these community jails. And by the way, the reality is there's no money for it. We're going to be on the brink of fiscally dissolving because of the damage that de Blasio has done by overspending. All that stimulus money with a $100 billion budget. Have you seen the recent tax rolls? Less property tax coming in, less income tax coming in. There's no more money coming from Washington.
So you're not going to go to Florida like Eric Adams and get those people to come back?
Oh, please. He should knock himself out. What is this, like he won the Super Bowl? Hey, I'm off to Disney World. January 2nd, he said he's going to Florida. Then from Florida, he's going to the DR and PR, where they have Somos every year, where the lobbyists hang out and wine you, dine you, and pocket line you. I say, Eric, you're going to be mayor? You stay right here.
Wait a minute. How can you whine about the fact that the tax rolls are down, that sales tax is down, that the real estate tax is down, and say you're not going to do anything about it? At least he says, I'm going to go ask him to come back. You think it's just a stunt?
Let me tell you.
Is that a stunt?
Nobody's coming back, Marcia. They made this decision. It probably was a very difficult decision.
There's no chance that people who left the city...
What is he going to give them? Corporate welfare? Nothing. I give them nothing. The corporations get too much corporate welfare. See, that's the problem.
So how are you going to run the city if you don't have any people paying the taxes?
Well, we're going to have to do more with less, which every family does when they have less finances. You can't keep spending money you don't have like a drunken sailor.
So what are you going to cut?
Oh, Thrive. The non-existent.
I know.
That goes.
Okay, but that's $1 billion.
That's $1.25 billion plus another $300 million next year. And then you have the bloated Department of Education budget. $33 billion. Most of it never goes to the schools, to the teachers. Teachers are still paying for supplies for their students. What are all those bureaucrats in the DOE doing? We're going to cut.
How much?
Wait, what are the sacred cows? What are you not going to cut?
Oh, the police. They've already been cut. We're going to refund the police, and then I'm going to have a specialized tax on all those who don't pay property tax. Hey, Jimmy Dole in Madison Square Garden, you don't pay a penny. Columbia. NYU, they sit on endowments of billions. They buy up property in Morningside Heights and Greenwich Village, and then they take it off the property tax rolls. We're going to have a dedicated property tax against those 3 institutions so we can hire
only those
3,000. No, there are others, but those are the 3 biggies. You say to yourself, they benefit from public safety, from police, and yet they pay no property taxes? They're not religious organizations. Pay your fair share so we can hire the cops back. Eric Adams isn't saying that he wants to hire cops back. When he was offered offered that opportunity by President Joe Biden, remember, said, you guys in these cities in distress.
But he says he wants to bring back the plainclothes unit. You agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. You have to have that engagement in which the plainclothes unit preemptively stops the guns from being pulled out and stops the gangs from having their retaliatory drive-by shootings.
So you agree on something?
Oh, we agree on that. And
okay.
the traffic stops, because that's where you pull out a lot of the guns.
Okay. I want to talk about the mentally ill homeless. We see them every day. People who are obviously ill, they're in crisis, they need help. Right now, the law says you can't forcibly remove them from the street and give them the help they need. Should the law be changed to make that the case?
Well, I disagree with that interpretation. They are brought for psychiatric observation from time to time. It could be Bellevue, Elmhurst in Queens. It could be another facility, Kings County. If you can get 2 psychiatrists to agree, they can be kept for 90 days for further observation. This allows them clean clothes, good food, get back on track, get their medication. Then you can make another interpretation after 90 days. We don't do anything. Look at these lost souls. They're all over the city. I'm taking care of them for 42 years, and the crisis is growing. What is Eric Adams going to do? He's going to just be de Blasio 2.0, follow in the same footsteps.
Wait a minute. You keep saying day after day that Eric Adams is de Blasio 2.0, but they differ on a whole bunch of things, from the gifted and talented program, public safety, vaccine mandates, how you should alert people when there's a storm. So how is it fair? I know it's it sounds good on the campaign trail, no. But is it fair to keep saying that he's Bill de Blasio?
Oh, quite. On the debate stage the other night, he gave de Blasio a B+ mark. That means you're going to end up following many of his policies because you think they're good. I gave him an F and said, go back to Cambridge. The other thing is they agree on the vaccine mandates. They agree on the mandates.
No, he did not agree on the vaccine mandates. He said he would totally do it differently, that he would talk to the unions, get their concerns. Right, I mean, I don't want to make the case for him. I'm just telling you that's what he said. I listened to him.
But they are going to be fired. Remember, they call it furlough. You don't get any pay, and you can't get any work.
If you work with the unions, maybe you don't have to do it. Maybe you can find a way to get more people in the unions to agree to take the test. At least you start out talking to the unions instead of setting the unions up as an enemy.
Right, but that was the perfect compromise. Vaccinate, encourage to get vaccinated. If you can't or won't, you get tested once a week. That was working with the cops and firefighters. And then de Blasio decided, my little pretties, I'm like Michael Corleone, leaving. I'm going to settle all scores.
Why is a mandate such a bad idea?
Well, how is it a good idea? We're going to lose hundreds of essential workers. Heroes. I think we could all agree they were heroes. Especially the healthcare workers.
But if people aren't vaccinated, how do you propose stopping COVID?
It is being stopped. We're at 1%. We're at an all-time low. Why are we doing this now? We're not under a situation where COVID is going up. We've gotten control. We're down at 1%. And look at these draconian measures that they're using. For instance, Saturday, went to vote with my wife, who's running for city council. Didn't have to show a vaccine passport. I didn't even have to show ID. For the most sacred thing you get to do, vote. Went across the street for a cheeseburger and fries. I had to show a vaccine passport and ID. Could have went to Jersey. I wouldn't have had to show anything. Is the air different in Jersey than it is in New York City? This is nonsense. This is draconian. This is government trying to control us from the cradle to the grave. There was a compromise. It worked. If you can't be vaccinated, you won't be vaccinated. You get tested. And by the way, I'm mayor. I bring them all back. I hire all the furloughed workers back, and I give them back.
City's offering $500 to people in the city, municipal workers, to get vaccinated. What about the people?
I don't have a problem with that.
No problem. What about the people who got vaccinated already? They're like, hey, I could have gotten it.
We want to go further with herd immunity. I don't have a problem with bribing people. Isn't that what businesses are doing? They're giving them $1,000 to get the vaccine. I want more people vaccinated, but I realize some can't because of medical or religious reasons, and others don't trust the government. Gee, I wonder why they don't trust the government, Democrats or Republicans. They're constantly involved in what I call political technology. That's why I trust people. I don't trust politicians, and if I get elected mayor, don't trust me either. Trust Marcia, Kramer, yourself, and other members of the Fourth Estate to keep our feet and our hands to the fire.
I'm curious about one thing. How are you supporting yourself during this campaign? I know you probably had to give up your radio gig. You probably had to give up your TV gigs. How are you supporting yourself and your 17 cats?
Yes, well, interesting. Isn't that amazing that if you're in elected office, like Eric Adams is or like Scott Stringer was, you continue to get paid even though you know they're not doing their job.
So how are you supporting yourself?
I had to leave. The moment I announced, all my competitors say, unfair, FCC. So I've had to pool together resources, family members, friends. I mean, I'm hanging by a thread.
Right now, are you on anybody's payroll right now?
Are you like a charity case for your family?
I wouldn't say a charity case. Obviously, that's money that I can accumulate.
How do you feed the cats if you have no money?
Oh, my wife is amazing, the way she's able to bifurcate the cans and give them their treats.
So you said you're not on anybody's payroll right now?
No, I'm not on
Nobody's funding anything that you're doing?
Nobody's funding me. The only funding I get is in the campaign that goes to the campaign to get the matching funds that have permitted me to run TV.
So how do you handle the day-to-day then? How do you handle the day-to-day?
The day-to-day?
Finances.
Guess what? I'm in the subways, I'm in the streets, I'm in the public housing project.
How do you pay your electric bill? How do you buy a phone?
My wife is an e-attorney. Nancy has had a very, very productive career in law, first as a criminal defense attorney.
But she's running for office too. She still has a practice while she's running?
Oh, absolutely. Got to make that moolah shmoolah, right? You know, the landlord, they come, and we haven't declared that we're part of the moratorium, which we could have. No, we're paying the rent, we're paying the bills, and I'm paying Eric Adams my child support. What a disgrazia, what a shanda that in the middle of the debate, he says that I'm stealing money that should have gone to child support.
If you win, we're going to take those cats to Gracie Mansion?
And there's a benefit.
How many of them?
I'm the only candidate ever to run on a platform of no-kill shelters. We're not killing any more cats or dogs. Cats inside Gracie Mansion and all those pit bulls that they kill, they'll be outside in the yard.
So, Curtis, if you're such a big proponent of animals, I wonder, do you still eat meat? Do you eat cows, chickens, lambs?
Yeah, I'm not like Eric Adams. He's got me beat. He's a vegan, and for all the right reasons, and he's become a great role model.
So isn't that sort of like a contradictory thing? I mean, you're into cats, but you'll eat animals?
Well, I'm telling you, I'm slowly vegging off. You like that, vegging off?
That's good.
My wife is turning me into a vegetarian. Eric has me beat at that.
So what did you have for dinner last night?
Salad.
No meat, no chicken, no little lammies?
I have chronic Crohn's disease. That's what's going to force me to probably become a vegan. Right now, it's mostly vegetarian because I have chronic Crohn's disease, which, let me tell you something, I'd rather get shot 5 times again by the Gottis and Gambinos. The chronic Crohn's disease,
but you just admitted that you went across the street and had a cheeseburger.
Oh, no, I used that as an example. Didn't have it that day.
It sounded like an example.
Yes.
Would you shut down the zoos in the city?
No.
Bronx, Central Park, etc.
I would look at the zoos, especially the larger animals, like the Bronx Zoo, Happy. Remember the elephant banging its head on the wall? Obviously in deep depression. Rescue groups said, we'll take Happy off your hands. But the Bronx Zoo insisted, we'll keep Happy here. Happy is not so happy. Happy is depressed. So I would say you look at it on a case-by-case basis. I've been there with my children, my 2 youngest sons, to look at the elephants. They don't look very happy to me. They have no space.
So would you shut it down?
No, not the whole zoo. Absolutely not. I know it was reported that way. But obviously, if you look at a case-by-case basis, a lot of the larger animals, it's so unfair to keep them in such limited spaces. They need space. They need to be able to socialize with their fellow animals.
So do you think that Mayor de Blasio should pay back the $320,000 that he racked up with police and security people taking him on his presidential campaign?
Oh,
and if you think he should, how would you collect the money?
Oh, the same way. He's a deadbeat. He's a slacker. You know, he's a welcher. Remember when Preet Bharara,
So would you sue him?
You better believe it, because remember this guy. He's such a fake, phony, fraudulent fugazi. He said, I will pay all my expenses when Preet Bharara was investigated.
I was there when he said that.
And then remember how he flipped right before Memorial Day weekend and said, no, 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 I'm going to have you, the taxpayers, pay.
Well, he said he was going to have a legal defense fund, but he hasn't set that up yet.
Yeah, another slush fund, right? Another nonprofit. They almost put him in jail. He should have been in jail. No bail.
So you, if you were the mayor, would sue a former mayor?
Absolutely. And it wouldn't just start there. For Thrive, everybody asked me, including Democrats, progressives, and liberals, Whatever happened to that money, the $1.25 billion? They've never been accountable. To me, that's more egregious because they've left the lost souls into the streets with no help. That's what Thrive money was supposed to go to.
But you can't sue Shirlane McRae for the $1 billion in Thrive. There's no evidence that she put it in her own pocket. This is $320,000.
Wait. I'll have the Department of Investigation pull out the spreadsheets. Let's see where the money is. She's never accounted for it. City Council had subpoena power.
So you're saying there's something unkosher with how they spent the money?
Well, who have they helped? Show me one case of a person who comes forward and say, you know, if not for Thrive, I might have committed suicide. I might have been relegated to the streets with my emotional issues. I haven't seen one case. And she's been asked repeatedly. The Democrats, they don't believe her, but they won't subpoena her. Curtis Sliwa will subpoena her and Bill de Blasio. And guess what? We'll put them out in Rikers, no bail. They'll get to see Rikers finally.
We will follow up. What about the City Council legislation that would allow people with green cards to vote in elections? Where are you on that?
No, I'm opposed to that, although I think that should be left to an initiative and referendum. City Council and Mayor make too many decisions. Let the people decide. And if the people vote to let people with green cards or visas to work vote, then that will be...
During the debate, you claimed that Idanis Rodriguez, who's a city councilman, was not a citizen. I think you were incorrect in that.
Absolutely.
Do you owe him an apology?
Absolutely. I apologize to him right now. I've known Idanis Rodriguez. He's a great immigrant story, taxi driver, teacher. I remember he was doing a graduation for Hispanic students for Washington Heights. Some of them were guardian angels. I was there. Loved his story. I conflated the two.
I mean, he's the sponsor of this bill.
Yeah, well, that's what I did. I conflated because he was talking about green card holders and those with work visas. He's entitled to an apology, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. But I think we should put it up for an initiative and referendum. Let him campaign for it. People like myself against it, and let's see what the voters decide.
Does the City Council actually have the authority to do it, or would it have to be done by the state or federal level?
No, I think they have the authority to do it for local elections. I don't think they have to. I stand to be corrected, but I think it can be done on the law. Other cities, I think there are like 8 cities now that permit the green card holder and the work visa holder to...
By the way, he said he's been a citizen for more than 2 decades.
Yeah.
Just for the record.
Yeah, look, you know, we make mistakes. The one thing about Curtis Sliwa is I've made many mistakes in my life. I apologize.
You own this one.
Yeah.
Bloomberg's big gulp soda tax. What about that? Would you pass that?
No, it didn't work then, even with Bloomberg lobbying. Remember, Governor David Paterson, the same. He tried that. Didn't work. Now, you educate people. Look, I used to be a chronic Coca-Cola drinker. 2 64-ounce bottles a day. People said, you're going to pay for that, Curtis. And I did. After the gunshots and then the Coke. That's how I ended up with chronic Crohn's disease.
Would you lead the way on diet, on health, on food?
Well, that's the other thing I agree with Eric Adams. He's doing a very good job of promoting healthy eating habits. Obviously, the sugar is the killer. Sugar is a killer for so many people needlessly. I know. I used to be addicted to Coca-Cola. So you got to try to educate people, but you can't force them. This is not the mommy state from the cradle to the grave. Get government off our necks.
So school violence has really gotten out of hand since school went back to in-person learning. I wonder whether you think it's a good idea that Mayor de Blasio announced with great fanfare and now seems to be pulling back on to move school safety out of the NYPD and put it under the control of the Department of Education. Good idea, bad idea? What would a Mayor Sliwa do?
Well, number one, if you listen to Greg Floyd, who's a great guy, who's the head of the union for the school safety officers, they need an additional 500 school safety officers. Excuse me?
1,500.
I stand corrected. But they need more. Plus, you got guys like Jumaane Williams. They don't want any security officers supervised by the NYPD.
Should they be moved from the police department to the Department of Education, which is a key plank of the defund the police movement?
How did that work when the Board of Education used to supervise these school safety officers? It was horrible. And they want to pull out the metal detectors? Are they pulling out the metal detectors from Madison Square Garden, City Field, LaGuardia, JFK?
Right. Speaking of metal detectors, there are 88 metal detectors in schools. There are 520 high schools. Should you increase metal detectors in schools around the city? We have 30 seconds.
Absolutely. They just recovered 6 guns in 2 days. How heroic these school safety officers.
Increase it to what?
Excuse me?
Increase it to what? What number?
I mean,
Every high school should have
all
a metal
520.
That's right. Perfect example. Just like LaGuardia. Doesn't everybody have to go through a metal detector? It should be good for the elite, and it should be good for the indigent and poor. Let's level the playing field. Everybody goes through a metal detector.
Okay. Thank you. We've enjoyed this.
My pleasure.
Thanks for being with us today. And to see this conversation again or to see our conversation with Democrat Eric Adams, you can head over to cbsnewyork.com. Thank you so much at home for watching.